as you can see, I like your stuff very much. In fact, I'm going to take the jacket off because it makes me sweat, but I just wanted you to show I was really interested in it. And that was the only literal... Do you mind if I put this on your chair? Good, thank you. I knew we'd be friends because of your skirt. It was really meaningful. But it's a privilege to be with you because I actually do really enjoy your store. Like when I'm taking the kids, I have two girls, 10 and 11, and when I go to the Roseville store, I just kind of hang there because no one cares about weird things. They like my kids being kids there. I have two daughters, an 11-year-old who's really into world domination, and a 10-year-old who's into poop emojis and unicorns all at the same time with glitter and Lego League. It's a life, friends, it's a life. So when we come together, I love being in an environment where they're okay to be themselves, which means I can shop. And it's been an enjoyable thing. But for our time, I'm going to talk a bit about leadership, but I want to give you context. I want to give story in terms of your story from my perspective. I've lived in the States about 13 years now, moved here about 5-6 years ago. I was in Arizona for a while, California for a while. And in that time, it was a time of massive change leaving your nation, leaving your culture, having children, which does all kinds of interesting things to your body. Yay! All kinds of things. And normally everything just goes south. And trying to work out who you are in the midst of all of that. Who you are when you don't know your way around, well, anywhere anymore, because you drive on a different side of the road. And who you are when you have these magnificent little beings who evoke the strongest of emotions, and then you think, I could really mess you up and require you to be in therapy for years. It's a challenge, friends, it's a challenge. And then, in the midst of it, you're working and trying to get on with your life, and you kind of lose your way. And one of the ways in which you lose your way is you're never quite sure how to present yourself anymore. I grew up in London, and in London, a lot of people wore black all the time, partly because of the weather, and partly because it was easy, and just because we thought it was cool. And partly, sometimes you wear black to mask things. When I come into a new stage of life, who are you now? Who were you after you had the kid, or after you had that experience? And I remember coming into Evereve, I think it was Hot Mama then, which made me go into the store, frankly, and thinking, I'm allowed to have a stomach here. I'm allowed to have a body here. I'm allowed to have an ever-changing body here. And on one level, we could say it's just fashion. But sometimes, as a woman, and because some of my friends who shop at Evereve aren't mothers, are single, are starting their professional life, sometimes the most courageous thing you get to do that day is to actually put your clothes on. Because life is throwing things at you. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do that day is say, I'm going to get up again. Because you've opened a bill that was way bigger than you thought it was, or because you've had a phone call where a family member has a diagnosis that you hope no one in your family would ever get, because you spoke to a doctor and your hopes for that child are further delayed. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is get dressed that day because you're under the fog of postpartum depression. I had postpartum depression after my second child, and whilst I could hold her, I couldn't hold much else. I couldn't order a coffee in a store because I didn't know what I wanted. I couldn't call my friends because I couldn't ask for help. So my world became very small, and the strongest thing I could do that day was to get dressed. And the next strongest thing was to get dressed with something that wasn't covered in spit up. Because it was an acknowledgement that I was still here. It was an acknowledgement that I was still a woman. I still had thoughts, I still had ideas, I was still me, it still mattered. And so on one level, it's just fashion. On another level, it's about how we express our identity and the people we are in the world. And the beautiful thing about coming into your environments is that when someone has the strength that day to get up and put their clothes on, there's a voice coming back affirming who they are. If you ever wondered whether you were leaders, I would tell you it's too late to decide. If you ever wondered whether you were people of influence, I would say it's already decided. Yes, by your numbers and your growth, for sure. But through the stories of the many women who come through your stores, who are influenced, who are courageous enough to do another day, because someone talked to them like they were a human being that day. Someone encouraged them in the colors that they wore. Someone got them away from the rat race of competing and comparing and actually celebrated who they were. If you ever wondered whether leadership was something that was for you, I would say maybe ask people their story and why they keep coming back again and again and again. Because when you're affirmed like that, when you're inspired like that, when you're empowered like that, then you can watch Barney for the 37th time that hour. You can go to the bank and work out how you do your debt. You can call a lawyer if you have to. You can make courageous decisions again because you look in the mirror and you finally recognize who you see.